All righty, what's going on? What's going on, everybody? What's
All
going
right.
on?
How you doing? How y'all doing? Tom, Justin.
Hanging in there, man. See if we could get people. How many people getting joining in?
Yeah, we'll let them join in for a second. If Ryan can see, are they joining in, Ryan?
Yep, we've got them coming in. We got about 41 plus live right now.
All right.
All righty. What's going on, everybody? What's going on? It's Justin with Chi-Town Crime Tracers. Joining me today is Tom DeVore, the one and only. And then we also got my boy Tyrone Muhammad from ECCSC. And we wanted to get on here and talk about the Safety Act law that's everybody is panicking about. And I know a lot of people got questions because they've been coming to me asking me, and I don't even know too much about it. So I want Tom to join in with us today and discuss more about it because there is more to it. And then other issues we got going on in the community that we need to talk about as well. So if anybody got questions, first I'm gonna get to Tom real quick and just see if he can discuss what the Safety Act is.
All right, thanks, Justin. Yeah, there's a lot to that act. I mean, as we all know, the bill was passed in January of 2021. It's 700 and some pages long. It covers and actually affects over 200 plus statutes and covers numerous topics. The conversation that's been had of recent has to do with the parts of the law that are changing the cash bond provisions on when someone can be bailed out of jail, when they can't. You know, there's no cash bond provisions anymore. That's been a big topic of conversation. And again, a lot of people are asking questions. I do the best to answer those questions that I can from all different aspects because, you know, you have the public as a whole, you know, the community has questions. You know, the courts actually are having questions, the judges and the courts. And then also you have those who have been accused of a crime, you know, how it might impact them. And so, you know, depending on which angle you're coming from, the conversation is different and sometimes the questions are different. And, you know, this law is very complicated and has some moving parts and depending on which vantage point you're looking from. So I'll do the best I can to answer the questions and give the overviews.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. Because I know a lot of people was panicking and they talked about, well, it's going to be the purge on January 1st. I know every time I go to crime scenes, I go live and I see people commenting. I make posts about shootings and people getting killed. And oh my God, wait till January 1st. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And so I'm like, okay, we gotta talk about this because I know.
You know, yeah, and depending, we can have specific conversations. But you know what's interesting is let's talk about how it exists today, Justin, and what we deal with today as far as bail, et cetera. And again, people, whether they think it's good, bad, et cetera, may depend upon their own circumstance. But if someone is accused of a crime today and you get arrested and they take you to jail, the provisions of the law that deal with them being released while they're waiting for a trial, you know, our Constitution of Illinois has a provision in there that says that all persons, everyone, is to get the opportunity to be out on bail, which means they're released while their trial is awaiting. And there's only a few circumstances, a few types of crimes of which the court can just say, we're not going to offer you any type of bail. And primarily what those types of charges are felonies for which you can't get probation if you're convicted of that crime. You know, for example, first-degree murder, armed robbery, things like that. Those types of crimes, the Constitution says the court can deny you bail. All the rest of the crimes that we could talk about, the court has to offer you some type of bail. Whether or not someone then can post a bond, a cash bond, is a separate conversation, but that at least has to be offered to someone who's been accused. And this new law that they're wanting to enact in January, it tries to disrupt that whole structure. And again, whether people think it's good or bad, we can talk about. But what it does fundamentally is it creates these categories of crimes. And depending upon which one of those categories someone has been arrested for, they may just be able to leave without ever having to see a judge, or they may then have to go in front of the judge and the judge make a decision about whether or not he's going to offer them bail. So, that's the overview of it. The categories that everybody has been seeing in these memes, like second-degree murder, robbery, kidnapping, the reason that those memes are out there, and those memes are technically accurate under this statute, is that this new law attempts to say those categories of crimes, you just have to be released automatically and the judge never sees you. Now, do I think they did that on purpose? I would hope not, right? But the fact of the matter is 100 of 102 of the state's attorneys across the state of Illinois have interpreted this the same way. That again, those categories of crimes that you've seen in those memes, the suggestion is that they never even go in front of a judge. They just have to be released automatically.
Right. So what does this really mean for the community, city of Chicago? Like, everybody's nervous and panicking about it.
Right. Well, and again, so that particular issue, for
So
example,
real quick, Tom, if you don't mind, real quick, I just want to first of all thank you. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me well? Because I'm out in the city, I'm out in the community doing what I do, violence intervention, and I'm out in the street. So as you can see, let me see if I can. Tracy, no. So from what I see, let me see if I can flip my camera around. I don't think I can, so y'all can see me out here. But real quick, Tom, is that I commend you and I appreciate the fact that we can get someone like yourself online to pretty much explain to us, because it's been an issue throughout the communities about what this really is and what it represents. And many of us have speculation that we haven't read 700 pages. I pride myself on reading laws and dealing with issues as it relates to formerly incarcerated persons. And we haven't been able to read this, nor have we had an attorney general that we have in Kwame Raoul that can not only come forth and explain the bill, but in general to even come forth and explain any of the issues or ills that we've been facing in our community that may need to be addressed or even prosecuted for that matter. And there's a number of issues I think should be prosecuted or even investigated into the as it relates to public safety, and even into some I think things of elected officials that we have grown distasteful with as a community. So I appreciate you, man, for coming on and even attempting to explain it. It makes me think that we will have an attorney general that we can actually reach out to and touch, because I never felt, even with Kwame Raoul being a black man, that I ever had an opportunity to even touch him or to make our issues real to him. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you, Tom.
Tyrone, I appreciate that. And the way that I have tried to look at it, again, we all have different points of views depending upon our own lives. But what I really see going on, not just in Illinois, but across the country, is the political class and those in the political elite positions and those everyday people who are not in that category. So, whether we're white or we're black, whether we're Hispanic, we either are part of the political class or we're not a part of the political class. And if you're in that political elite, regardless of race, they see things differently than those of us who don't belong to that group. Because, I grew up and my parents were poor. I wasn't in the political class, paid my way through college. So, I find us all to be different than those. No disrespect to Mr. Raoul, but he was born into that political class. His parents were well-to-do. I think his parents were his dad was a doctor at least. So, he lives a different life than we live, and that's okay. But
Right,
there was
right.
one of the gentlemen that was talking about, I was reading the comments, Justin, about, well, they can hold you for 48 hours. Okay. Under some circumstances, it's true. You can be detained for, let's say, kidnapping, and they can detain you for 48 hours. I don't disagree with that. But after that, according to the statute, that person can't be detained any longer, and they have to be set loose until their trial. So does the 48 hours, does it, matter? Maybe, maybe not. But, that's the limit
And
of a
what
kidnapping one under the statute.
and with that, because I heard something about house arrest too. There's a certain time limit or something until the next court date. What is that about?
You mean with the ankle monitoring, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, ankle monitoring for certain types of crimes, if they're on pretrial release, they can be put on an ankle monitor, but they have to be in violation for 48 hours before anybody can go and try to pick them up for violating their ankle monitoring terms. But, the suggestion is a lot can happen in 48 hours. So.
Right, yeah.
But, here's something that I think this is a narrative, Justin, that
Mhm.
the governor and those that promote the Safety Act talk about. Well, if you have two men that are accused of the same crime, one of them has access to money, the other doesn't have access to money. Let's talk about that hypothetical, okay?
Right.
They commit the same crime, and the conditions upon which the court would release them pending trial are the same. You can't break any laws. You can't leave the state. You have to return for all of your hearings. You maybe can't go around somebody. Those conditions upon which they would let you go, let's say those are also exactly the same, okay?
Mhm.
And then the judge has to decide, is the promise of this person alone sufficient that they'll follow these rules? If they'll promise me that they won't break these rules, they can let them go on a recog bond. You're familiar. But maybe the
Mhm.
judge says, you know what, I'm not sure that their promise alone is enough, and I want them to post some money to incentivize them to not break these rules, because if they do, not only they maybe can get arrested again, they're going to lose their money. So the guy that's got the money posts the bond. The guy that doesn't have the money doesn't post it, okay? Under the new law, the way that it's written, the judge could just as easily detain both of them without even offering the opportunity for a cash bond to support their promises. So just because this new law, if it goes into effect the way it's written, it doesn't mean that both of them are going to be let out of jail, the guy with the money and the guy without the money. It's just as likely that the judge says, I'm going to hold both of you without even offering either of you the opportunity to post any kind of bond to assure me that you'll come back and do the things you're supposed to do. So their narrative, why they did this, doesn't even necessarily make sense. It could just as well mean that we're going to keep both of you without any chance to get out. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, their narrative of, people that don't have the money should be set free. The judges could possibly just say, I'm going to keep you here. So
Right.
that's a narrative they don't want to talk about, sadly.
Yeah. I see somebody else in the comment is asking how would this affect the gun violence in Chicago?
Again, the gun violence in Chicago is more complicated than just the criminal justice system, right? There's all kinds of social factors going on there that I don't pretend to be an expert on, because I don't live there, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. You live there. But if the reality is, Justin, I would ask you, if those who are arrested for gun violent crimes are going to more easily be able to be released back pending their trial, if that's true, then is that going to cause more crime problems in the city of Chicago? Because less are detained and more are let back out pending trial? I mean, you can answer that question for yourself. That's a real
Right.
possibility. Because here's something that I want people to understand about these new categories of crimes, okay? That if you commit one of these categories, there's 7 categories in this new law. If you commit one of those categories, the judge may detain you till your trial. If there's a crime you commit that's not within those categories, the suggestion is by the law, you can only hold them 48 hours. You have to let them loose. Every drug crime, drug-related crime in the state is excluded from this new statute. So according to, again, not just my interpretation, but many of the state's attorneys in our state, if someone is charged with a drug-related crime, they can't hold them any longer than 48 hours, and they have to let them go according to this statute. So what does that mean? Community, you would have to, again, talk to the people of the community.
Right. Let's see. Tyrone, you still here? See, he turned his video off.
There's a lady, Dion. Most black people that go to jail won't be offered bonds. I want to speak to that. Under the new law, ma'am, if the judge wants to detain you because he doesn't believe your promise in and of itself is enough, nobody's going to be offered a bond, because the bond portion of it, the legislature's trying to strip out. So today, if someone is charged with a crime and the judge says, you know what, I think you need to post $1,000 and then I'll believe you that you're going to come back, that under this new law is gone. So the judge is either going to detain them until trial with no opportunity to post a bond, or they're going to be recogged and just let go until their trial occurs. There is no in between according to this law.
That's interesting.
And so that's really one of the concerns, Justin, is again, there's nothing wrong with, and it was sad when Governor Pritzker, again, trying to make, political hay out of this, was saying, well, if a single mother gets charged with stealing diapers and she's going to sit in jail, right? That is 100% impossible under the absolute worst scenario under the law. If you get charged in Chicago with shoplifting, the most the bond can ever be is $150. And under the law, you get $30 a day credit for every day that you're in jail waiting trial. So absolute worst case scenario would be 5 days, not 6 months. And I can tell you that someone who takes diapers, a shoplifting charge, a misdemeanor shoplifting charge, is not sitting in jail because the jail system can't afford that. It doesn't make any sense. But if you just interpret the law strictly as it's written, 5 days is the worst possible scenario. Yet the governor's saying that this person could sit in jail for 6 months trying to pull on people's heartstrings. And he's absolutely making that up.
Hey, Tom, I'm seeing in the comments, I think there's a misunderstanding that there's two distinctions of this law. There's the categories of people that are just going to be let out without seeing the judge, and then the category of people that you're talking about that the judge is going to have to make a decision whether to release or recog. If you want to clarify those two issues.
Yes. And again, and what we're talking about here is this document, this law as it's written, right? Because there are constitutional issues with this statute, but we're not going to get into those. I'm just talking about how is it written. So the way that it's written is there's 7 categories of types of offenses. And if someone is charged by the state's attorney or the police, whoever, however they got done, with a particular crime, if they fall within one of those 7 categories, they may be detained. Maybe. You have to go see the judge. But if they don't fit within one of those 7 categories, then they never go to see the judge. They have to be let out within 48 hours. And those types of crimes that fit that, you have to let them out within 48 hours without ever seeing the judge, is second-degree murder, kidnapping, robbery, all drug-related offenses, every drug-related offense. So somebody just asked the question, if somebody gets caught with fentanyl, can they be detained pending trial? And the answer is no, they cannot. They have to be let out within 48 hours according to this statute. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. Call your state's attorney and ask them in the county you live in, because I've been talking to a lot of them, and they all say that this is the interpretation of the statute. Any drug crime, I actually had one state's attorney, ladies and gentlemen, tell me, If somebody in my community has a drug warehouse, they're actually making this stuff in their house, under this new statute, I could not detain them pending trial absent some extraordinary circumstance. Just based upon the charge itself, this state's attorney says I have to let them go within 48 hours. Is that good, Ryan?
Yeah, no, that clarifies it.
Somebody just asked what the 7 categories are. If I'm going to give you the citation in the law, it's 725 ILCS 5/110-6.1. There's 7 categories listed there, and you can read them. But keep in mind, in those 7 categories, I remember who just asked that question. In those 7 categories, there are no drug-related offenses in those 7 categories. None whatsoever.
Let me see. I think I had a question because I know I read something about more to this Safety Act. Something about trespassers or something could be on your property, and I guess the police can't do nothing about it. What is that? Is that true, Tom, or is that anything to do with this act?
It does. Let me answer this one first. Mark just asked it. Why would anyone arrested on one of the 7 charges even have the chance to get out? The reason of that is, Mark, it's called the Illinois Constitution, because the Constitution of our state says that unless you commit one of these very small categories of offenses, you're presumed innocent and you have the constitutional right to be offered bail pending your trial. So the reason is your Constitution, sir. But the issue of trespassing that you're talking about, Justin, trespassing, just plain trespassing, is a Class B misdemeanor, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And this new statute says that if you're charged with a Class B misdemeanor, you can't be arrested. That the police officer just to hand you a ticket, like a speeding ticket type of, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So if you have somebody, hypothetical is, if somebody is on your property and they're not being aggressive, they're not trying to harm anybody, they're really nicey, and you call the cops and the cop comes, the cop can write them a ticket, a Class B misdemeanor, for trespassing on your property. The officer, just based upon them being on your property alone, cannot arrest them. So then you as a property owner have to decide how you're going to deal with that. And you have, if you get aggressive with them or do something to harm that person, you could actually be in trouble. So did they intend to do that? I don't know. But again, they made all Class B misdemeanors only such that the officer can hand them a ticket. They can't arrest them. So since you can't arrest them, if they're on your property, all he can do is write them a ticket and tell them to appear in court. So it's one of those nuances that they missed because of the way this law was passed. Got to keep in mind, Justin, this 750-page law was crammed through the legislature in January of 2021 in about 2 or 3 days. They just pushed it through by the special interest groups without having the public having any chance, or law enforcement or state's attorneys across the state or any of them, to really participate and to have these conversations. They kind of shoved it through at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning when everybody was asleep.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that because I heard this law was passed under our nose. Nobody really too much about it. Now all of a sudden it's coming out and people are panicking.
And when it passed, Justin, in January of 2021, not to go into effect until January 2023, 2 years later, 2 months after the governor's election. Do you think that was a coincidence, sir? It wasn't a coincidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was done on purpose to time it that way. And I think what happened is they didn't realize that here we are now in September of 21, 2 months before the election, and our people across the state are paying attention now. I don't think they expected that. I think that they thought the election would come and go, and Governor Pritzker just easily get reelected, and then all of a sudden in January, this thing comes about, and then everybody was caught off guard because our people just weren't watching as close as we should. You can put me in that category, but you know, for a lot of reasons, everybody statewide from the north to the south, you know, they're more in tune with what their government's doing. And universally, they're not happy, whether you're in Chicago or whether you're in Springfield or whether you're south in the Metro East area. People are not happy with what's going on here.
Wow. Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this. It's something that needs to be discussed and give more people understanding on this.
But we do, because it's, you know, there's already been 4 states' attorneys file a lawsuit, Justin, against the governor and against Kwame Raoul for the constitution, the constitutional issues that, again, we won't get into here. But what frustrates me a little bit is that our attorney general is, and Tyrone mentioned at the beginning, our attorney general is supposed to defend the people, right? All of us, you know, not just the citizens, but even those who have been accused of a crime. They have rights too, and they have rights to make sure that they're treated fairly, and et cetera. And the attorney general, if you heard him on TV a couple of days ago, Justin, he said, yeah, he says, I've got concerns about this bail provisions of this. We probably ought to look at that. 2 years later, now we ought to look at it, Mr. Attorney General, because the people are finally frustrated enough that they're talking about it. Now you think we ought to look at it? He should have looked at this 2 years ago, Justin, when it actually was being passed. He should have stepped up and said, all of these problems exist, and he didn't do that, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't even know that part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he mentioned that it's got problems, and I'm thinking, well, if it's got problems, why don't you, maybe you ought to sue somebody, Mr. Attorney General, but, you know, he doesn't do that.
Anybody in the comments, I know we got a lot of people watching, got any questions for Tom or anything about this law? Because I know y'all was asking me.
I'm sorry, Justin, let's talk about the something, you know, you see these memes going around about the purge, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And what that's suggesting is that the sheriffs and the state's attorneys throughout our state, they're looking at who they have in jail right now and the crimes they've committed, allegedly, et cetera, right? And they're saying under this new law, do they fit within these 7 categories that we've been talking about? If they don't fit within those 7 categories, they are saying, based upon this law, that those folks have to be let go pending trial. Okay. And so they've done the math and said, and again, up in Will County, I think they're saying well over half of their current persons held in jail are going to be turned loose. And across the state, I think it's maybe several thousand, 4, 5, 6,000 people currently being held that will be released pending their trial because they don't fit those categories. That's what people are talking about when you see the purge, is that, you know, all of these folks will be let out of jail pending trial because the new statute says you can't detain them. That's what they're talking about.
Right. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, because I know Tracy in the comments is asking, can this be repealed? And if so, how?
Yes, it can. A couple of things, ma'am. If the legislature because our legislature will go into a fall veto session sometime here this year. They'll be back in Springfield. It could absolutely be repealed, or it could be postponed until these things are addressed. So the legislature could, in fact, do that if they choose to. Also, there's a couple of these lawsuits that are pending saying that the way that the legislature, remember how I told you they shoved this thing out in the wee hours in the morning and a couple of things, that and a couple of other reasons are being argued in the court that this law is unlawful. So if one of those lawsuits is successful, it could potentially get rid of this as well. So either through the courts or through the legislature, it is possible before January 1st. It is. Yes, ma'am.
There you go, Tracy. There go your answer. See if I missed some questions. If y'all got any questions, let us know. This is something we need to talk about now. This is your opportunity. This law is coming.
And I'm going to repeat it again, Justin, just because I think it's important, is, you know, none of us anywhere would be going, we want someone who gets picked up on petty shoplifting to sit in jail for 6 months while they're waiting for trial. Nobody on the planet is going to agree with that. And I would suggest to you that it's not happening. But this law, to the extent it wanted to address that equity, as they call it, okay. But it didn't do that. What it did is it's got it in a situation to where a whole lot of people may be let out pending trial that we're not so sure we want out on the streets. And at the same time, it's going to take the opportunity away potentially of persons who would want to post bond and be able to be released pending trial. They may get stuck in jail with no opportunity to be released pending trial. So it's going to do two extremes at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's just, nobody wants that.
No, not at all. Just lost his comments. I'm trying to get Tyrone back on. I think we lost his connection. I know he wanted to comment on some more things.
Somebody just asked, is Illinois the first state to pass a bill like this? Yes, that's correct. Illinois is the very first one to pass.
Can you hear me, Justin? Can you hear me?
Okay, I hear you now. I just didn't see you on. Now I see you.
Yeah, I was trying to come in.
Okay, we got Tyrone.
I don't think it allowed me to say anything. But to one of the people that said, why would we let anyone out with those type of charges? See, this, Tom, is what I need. I think you have to teach the people, because I think a lot of us are uneducated in the Constitution, right? But yet we claim to be patriots. We claim to love the Constitution, when in fact our Constitution affords us a bond and even a trial by jury or trial by judge. So often I just think that just because a person have a violent crime, the judge has the discretion to determine whether or not I think a person should be released. That's why we elect judges, select judges, and elect judges to do that for us. So if a bond is afforded to a person because you are perceived innocent of proven guilty, am I right, Tom?
Yeah, we spoke to that. I don't know if you heard me, sir, but yes, when someone asked that question, I mentioned that the Constitution of the state of Illinois, Article 1, Section 9, says that all persons, except for a very small category, shall have the opportunity for bail with sufficient surety. Sufficient surety means the judge has to be satisfied on a case-by-case basis that they're going to come back to court, they're not going to break any more laws, they're not going to hurt people, etc. So just because someone is accused of committing a crime, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty, and they have a right to be out on bail pending trial unless these very small categories of crime are the crime.
Did you know, Tom, that our mayor in Chicago said that if they are arrested, they are perceived guilty because the police have did this or did due diligence. So it's very refreshing to understand that everybody has the same opportunity and obligations to the Constitution to be properly prosecuted, tried, or whatever. But my issue is right now, and I think Justin was alluded to. I had some other things I want to say, but we have a Tuesday march on Michigan at the water tower, the historical water tower. We starting from the historical water tower. Then we got a 10-minute walk to Ontario, where we'll be addressing the Medina Temple, which is this so-called contemporary casino that's being built. And from there, we're going to the Sunnyside Cresco Dispensary on Clark Street, which is another 9-minute walk. So what we're saying to our government and the mayor is that it is unacceptable for all of this violence to happen in our communities without an answer for stopping it. We're saying that violence prevention, re-entry, workforce and work opportunities are one of the main things we must do to prevent public safety, right? I mean, to work towards public safety. We're not seeing enough solutions. We're seeing excessive resources being thrown away that never get at the ills or the crux of the issue. So we're having a demonstration, Tom, and a press conference at 11 o'clock on Tuesday at the Historical Water Tower space. And then we will proceed to walk towards two locations where we will continue to demonstrate and talk about the ills of the war on drugs, as well as the fact that all these dispensaries are owned or operated by individuals who either made contributions to the Democratic Party or J.B. Pritzker, or those, they are cronies of his, and it hasn't addressed the tax dollars, hasn't been properly used to deal with the workforce development and deal with reentry and violence prevention in our city. We're saying that we want an investigation into the misappropriation of the people's funds, to organizations that's democratically led with no response to the ills that's happening in our communities every day. Last week, Tom, 60 shootings in our communities, and we didn't see the governor or the mayor doing major press conferences.
You know, I appreciate you bringing it up, Tyrone, because let me say something briefly on that. You know who I don't see? I don't see any politicians.
Absolutely. No aldermen, no state reps, no congresspersons, none.
Because, you know, is the attorney general, I mean, the attorney general, again, is law enforcement, but there's so much more to the conversation here than the Safety Act and law enforcement, because crime prevention and enforcement of the laws, it's an important component. But there's so many bigger issues going on in our communities, and you guys are the experts on that. I can see it, I listen, and I don't hear the Democrats or the Republicans, either one, talking about how do we bring back opportunity and things for the communities to grow upon and build upon, because that's the only real way to get rid of this crime, is there to be economic opportunity. And I don't see, gentlemen, I don't see any of them talking. I see the Democrats giving a little bit of lip service, but they don't talk about what are we going to do to create real, lasting opportunities in the communities. Because if we can do that, then it'll help deal with the crime issue. And that's what I want to hear them start talking about. And I haven't heard any of them talk about it yet.
Yeah, most definitely. Their voice also matters too.
And let me say, I've been into a lot of the communities, as you're gentlemen aware, you know, and the things Governor Pritzker has done the last couple of years on his heavy-handed approach on how he's dealt with the people statewide. That's nothing new for a lot of the communities on the south side of Chicago. They were telling me stories about their mayors and what their mayors have been doing and how they control the, you know, you want a license, you want a building permit, you want this or that, on how, you know, they reign over that stuff so heavy-handed. They're like, you know, our communities are used to that because that's been happening for a long time. So.
Wow.
And Kwame, they say Kwame Raoul won't help them.
Well, of course. We got any more questions, y'all?
Well, once again, I've said to you, I was one of the main proponents to getting Kwame Raoul in office. And I vowed to be one of the main proponents to remove him from office. Because if we're out every day stopping violence, and we don't have, and doing real behavior modification, Tom, because guns don't shoot people, people shoot people. So you got to get at the behavior and the thought process and the mindset that causes a young man to shoot another young man, or causes a young man to carjack a young woman or women or our community, or terrorize our community. So when we present a front like that and and a viable option, because the police is not to be used as the panacea to all the ills of Chicago. They didn't create them. They shouldn't be the ones have to stop them all. So when we stand before you, Tom, and we say our Attorney General, present Attorney General, hasn't reached out to us, haven't asked for our assistance, haven't been in our communities, haven't done none of the frontline work stuff necessary to make the people believe that he cares about their safety and he cares about prosecuting rogue politicians or whatever the case may be. It's appalling to me that we can have lobbyists where 99.9% of all cannabis licenses are owned by white men, while the premise of making weed cannabis legal was to say that it was to produce social equity and to create wealth in neighborhoods that was victimized by the war on drugs. How can you have wealth how can you have the premise of making cannabis legal to serve our community when most of the dispensaries are owned by people that don't even live in Illinois?
Coincidence?
It's a good question. A good point.
We lose them?
It's amazing. And my question is, Tom, is that J.B. Pritzker ran for governor to make his cronies legal drug dealers. And as my attorney general, my next attorney general, I'm asking you for an investigation and a national moratorium on the expansion of cannabis dispensaries and grow and whatever in the state of Illinois until we deal with all of the investigation necessary to look into KPMG, all these lobbyists, all these lawyers, and all these politicians that has benefited from the disinvestment that is cannabis. I really would like for you to think about that and to move in that way, because these dollars are being made or being used to marginalize certain individuals, just like we was given by LaShawn Ford line items over $500,000, and then by Senator Collins, we was line item over $250,000 to do violence prevention. But J.B. Pritzker and his administration eliminated our funds because we don't play his politics.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
but yet he's on the tour. Yet he's on the tour talking about public safety.
Public safety, yeah.
Well, Kwame Raoul, didn't he just say recently they gave $9 million out to help with violence?
Well, once again, I guess our organization and the work that we do on the ground wasn't necessary. We don't fit his bill. We don't fit his political, shall I say, model.
You know, I love this conversation because I have this conversation, gentlemen, across the state with everybody, you know, from all different parts of our state. And what's interesting to me is we're all having the same conversation, maybe sometimes about different topics, but it's the same conversation. And the conversation is where I started, is that the political elite, who a lot of them are now being charged with federal indictments, but that's a different conversation. The political elite have their agenda, and it's not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's a political elite thing. And in some fashion, it disenfranchises and marginalizes various different groups of our population across the state. And who's fighting for them? Nobody's fighting for them. The political elite in Illinois control the whole thing, and they make sure that it works for them. There's no checks and balances because Kwame Raoul is not going to stand up for anybody against the political bureaucracy. He's just not going to do it because his political survival depends upon it. That's just truth. And with me, I don't care about any of them. I don't care what political party they're from, Democrat, Republican, Independent. If you're trying to disenfranchise the people of this state to benefit the political elite, they're not going to have a friend in me, Tyrone and Justin. I assure you.
Yeah. I definitely feel you on that one. trying to see.
Anything else, sir?
Tyrone made a good point of view. Anything
Yes,
else
he
you
did.
want to say? So we got any more? I know we got a whole conversation going on in the comments. We got
I
any
know.
questions though, y'all?
Well, everybody in the comments,
Yeah.
just everybody in the comments, and anybody, of course, Tom is so much. He's so welcome to speak because he'll be able to speak and address some of the issues we were raised to the press on Tuesday at 11 a.m. But you all are welcome to come and be a part of the press that we're doing, because our goal is to create a whole new um, a revolutionary form, shall I say, of black politics that doesn't isolate and marginalize the very community that they claim that they're here to help. So this is a problem for our whole country. It's not no respect, irregardless to, shall I say, individual, color, person. This is happening all over the country, where
All over
these
here.
individuals have usurped our policy, our democracy, and they have made Black death a hustle, and they have used our social ills and issues to chase around 501c3 dollars, and I call them 501c3 pimps. Our community is languishing with these individuals that has violated our communities, and it has nothing to do with white folks outside of our community. I'm talking to everybody on this line, Justin, to say that we're most marginalized and disinvest. This investment happened as a result of people that look like us. So
Right.
if you're on the line, you think it's about color, I'm telling you, we are not the group that will not show up and point out the injustices of our own people, pastors and
Mhm.
politicians alike. That's my final say. And I see you Tuesday, Tom.
I'm coming, my friend. I promise you, I'll be there. Ryan, if
Yeah.
you're listening, make sure my calendar's open.
Yeah, I'll definitely be there too. I also heard Jedediah Brown will be showing up as well. There's gonna be a lot of special guests there, y'all.
Jedediah Brown. A lot of people I'm organizing, and I'm sure I told Tom, the true organization, I'm gonna show them what it looked like, and organizing and mobilizing for change. It's gonna look like the people he see on Tuesday, and not only that, I also have Darren Bailey committed to coming.
Mm.
Any other questions, Justin or Tyrone?
No, sir. I appreciate your
Yeah,
time, man.
yeah.
And I think once a week, you got to do
We
this
have to have
all
this
the way to
discussion. Yeah.
election time, because
Yep.
the people are ignorant in the law. Because with that being said, I myself is not going to read no 700, 800 pages of garbage that legislators put together. We need somebody to take it out, point out the nuances of it.
You're
Yeah.
exactly right, and need to point them out just based upon what it says, Tyrone, and not what somebody wants to say. Because I can't stand the political class trying to continually pit Republicans against Democrats and white people against black people. They do it on purpose to try to keep everybody bickering amongst themselves, and the only one winning is them. And it's
Yeah.
like, I'm tired of that. We can all have the same conversation. We may have different points of view, but that's okay. But collectively, if people from all of the communities in our state, all of them, say we had enough of this political nonsense, we're going to figure these problems out, we're going to tell you what to do, we can do it. We're the only ones that can do it. The political elite, they're not going to solve any problems. They're going to keep everybody fighting with each other. That's what they're going to do, because that's what benefits them.
Wow. So yeah, I really appreciate this conversation. I know this is our first time. And I appreciate everybody tuning in. We definitely should have this discussion, like Tyrone said, every week. Because
Yeah,
this
let's
is
pick another topic and do it again next week.
yeah, most definitely. And then even other guests that can join.
Absolutely.
Because I know a lot of people, they've been asking me all over every crime scene I go to. And I'm like, I don't know the answer. And I'll come back to Tom. Tom, what does this mean? What is this? I'm like, okay, we got to do something.
You know what, Justin? And I tell people this all the time. I said, no matter where I go in Illinois, we're all having the same conversation. We want to be safe. We want opportunity for our friends and our families and our communities so we can, live our version of the American dream, and you can't have opportunity if you're not safe, right? You got to have the educational system has to work, which means teaching these children real valuable skills, right? And our schools sadly are becoming more about social justice warrioring than they are teaching children education. So we want good education. We want safe communities. We want investment in our communities so we can all have opportunity. Everybody wants the same thing. And when I talk to politicians, that's the only thing I'm interested in. Tell me what you think about those topics and how we can help every community in our state achieve these goals. Don't tell me how you want to get elected, because it ain't about you getting elected. It's about you helping people, and just go help people, right? And, we're all having the same conversations. We just need to say, we're going to figure these problems out together. We as people, Democrat, Republican, white, black, Hispanic, we're going to solve the problems, and we're going to tell the politicians what to do, because if we just let the politicians sit there and do whatever they want, they just keep screwing everything up.
Exactly. That's what I've been saying.
And they get indicted for corruption.
Yeah. That's what I've been saying. We are the answer. We gotta do this, and it starts with us. It starts at home, the communities, and our children's the main ones that are really being affected by all of this. They're seeing all of this. It's been over 360 minor shots so far this year, and at least 70 killed. And everything just reported something today. So it definitely it takes more than just a conversation, but it starts with the conversation, and then action needs to be taken next.
Yes, sir.
So
thank you, Jeff.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it, because I know people have questions.
Thank you very much, Tyrone.
Oh yeah, most definitely, Tyrone.
Good day, gentlemen.
The last second, I gotta hit Tyrone too.
Yes, sir. Take care.
So I know that event that is going to take place